Yeah, Ira's one of my favorite guests, and I consider you a friend. Certainly after this conversation.
Yeah.
Now you know more about me.
We've been talking about our family life while we were waiting for this. So we've been talking, which I think is a good intro for this film.
That's right. It's all about family. That's for sure. I mentioned to Ira also that I met you once, Isabelle, when you were in New York doing press for White Material.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just hold that up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
You remember it perfectly.
I do. I remember.
It was Claire and I think it was Claire and you together.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't doing the podcast then, so now I actually can capture your beautiful voice, and so it's a thrill to meet you again or to see you again. Ira, I have a question for you regarding making a film in Portugal.
Yes.
And one might suspect or guess that you decided to make a film takes place in Europe with somewhat of a European cast. There's some Americans too, but because maybe you got financed by Europe or something like that. But in fact, that's not the case. You had this story for quite a while, right?
Yeah, it's funny that people would think that. It would be hard to...
it had something that started off.
No, I understand. But I had an idea about making a film about a family on a vacation.
Okay.
And once I had construct or that narrative framework, then it was where are we going to go? And my co-writer, Marisa Zacharias, is Brazilian. His mother's family is Portuguese, and he had recommended that we consider Sintra. So that's how we ended up in Portugal. And I felt like people don't, at least in this country, they don't come with a lot of preconceived ideas of Portugal.
That's true. You know, we're much more familiar with France, for instance, or Italy, etc.
Yes.
Portugal is sort of... But Sintra play itself?
Sintra plays itself.
It does.
Yes, though I would say my Sintra and the Sintra that you might encounter if you got off a bus as a tourist would be somewhat different. Sintra is a big region. It's an area. So there were very particular locations that when I visited, I felt a visceral connection to emotionally that I felt would be right for the film. So I ended up writing with Marisa. We wrote for these very particular locations in the film.
Mm-hmm. And then Isabelle, you play Frankie, the titular character. Were you familiar with Ira's films, or were they brought to your attention?
I'm familiar with some of his films. I haven't seen all Ira's films. I've seen Love is Strange, and I've seen Brooklyn Village, which was a little man here.
Mm-hmm.
It was called.
What was it called?
Brooklyn Village.
Oh, it was called
France.
Brooklyn Village.
Mm-hmm.
That's smart.
Yeah.
Brooklyn holds a certain
it worked.
mystique, maybe.
Yeah, it worked.
Maybe you should have called it that in retrospect, in hindsight.
So these are the two movies I've seen, and ever since I saw them, I thought we should get together.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was struck by the subtlety, by the writing, the dialogues, the feeling of thing being so truthful, so real. It's not realistic. Nothing to do with realism, because I don't think that in general movies are particularly realistic, or
no.
It's always a shape, or it's always a form, let's say. But within this form, I thought, yes, there was something so real and so possible for the actor to accomplish what I think acting should be always accomplishing, which is taking whatever you do from the notion of a character to the notion of a person. And certainly the way Ira do things, it necessarily takes the actors to a very personal territory, which at the end you feel like it's almost a little documentary about the actors.
You do have something of a, I don't know why I should say this, but this is only meant as an observation that you kind of do have, Ira, a bit of a, what we might call European sensibility, because the focus has been largely on families, and there is it's not quite so plot-centered. Maybe a couple of your earlier films.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm interested in intimacy.
That's
I think cinema is a really good place to make a record of intimate moments and to create an intimacy with the audience. And I think in terms of European cinema, it's certainly been a very big part of my education as a filmmaker. I didn't go to film school, and I learned how to make films by watching. And there's a history, and particularly French cinema with a few other people on the outside. But French cinema has been very important to me.
And myself too. Why is it that so many French films take place on vacation historically? Maybe less so now.
Yes, we have some famous American films which also take place in vacation,
I
like
know.
Vacances Romaines, for instance.
Roman Holiday.
Roman Holiday, for instance, just to quote one. Yeah.
But like
But I think a voyage.
Do you mean that's why we French people are very lazy? That's what you might mean.
Well, if that's the case, and I'm not saying it is, you prove the contrary, because I don't know when you rest, but you seem to, of course, work all the time.
I rest when I work. For me, it's like I was dreaming alive, but it's really a rest for me.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean it. It's not a joke. I really rest when I work. When I don't work, a little less.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Huh. What are you doing between projects?
When I don't work, so many things that,
Mm-hmm.
see movies,
Okay.
see plays. I love to go to the theater.
Yeah.
I could go to the theater every evening. That's what I do while I'm here in New York.
Are you seeing plays this week at all?
Yes, we've seen
Rose Tattoo.
The Rose Tattoo last night. Yes, with great Marisa Tomei in it. She's
Your
fantastic.
friend. Yeah,
she's really great, really great. And tonight I'll be seeing a play by Florian Zeller, with whom I did The Mother last winter here in New York at the Atlantic Theatre, and it's called The Hate of the Storm with Jonathan Pryce and Eileen Atkins.
Oh my gosh.
At the Manhattan Theatre Club.
What a great cast. Yeah. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm always note to self, And is there a lot of great theater in Paris?
Oh, yes, a lot, sure. And yes, a lot of companies from everywhere, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the set like, given the subject matter? It's kind of a... let me rephrase. Well, did you guys have time to rehearse? I know I'm sure the budget didn't allow for a long period per se, but was there time to? Because it was so much about relationships and communication. The film,
well,
Frankie,
I'm sure Ira has a lot to say about that, but I would say immediately we had time not to rehearse.
I never think of the budget as a restriction for me, even though there are restrictions that come from the budget.
I regret saying the B word right from
No. I by intention, I don't rehearse before I start shooting. So it's never an issue of time. It's really an issue of strategy and how to get what is the most emotionally alive performances possible. So I tend to spend a lot of work trying to prepare the set so that the actor has everything that they need, not to have to imagine anything, so that it's all right in front of them. So, for example, in the scene where Isabelle Huppert, Frankie, wanders into a birthday party of an older 86-year-old Portuguese woman, I spent a lot of time before she got there getting that group together, which is a real family.
It's quite clear. Well, other than that, or you are even more brilliant than I take.
No, the brilliant part is actually just getting the family. It's not that I would make a fake version of the family, because you actually can't fake intimacy. Something has to happen real. And I think, so for me, and this is often true, that there's often a scene or two in my movie where the fiction fully interacts with a documentary moment. And what I find is that when you have that in a film, it resonates beyond the scene itself. So everything else takes on a feeling of authenticity. So I think for me, I will say, I think we had we didn't have a tiny crew, but we had a small crew. It was a very... there was a friendly, creative, let's put on a show atmosphere to each day. The shooting style is quite technical in some ways, not for the actor maybe, but in terms of the blocking, it was quite specific. Yeah. And I would say that was one of the challenges, was like working in a way that needed to be very naturalistic, but involved a lot of particular moments and choices around lines.
Yeah, a lot of this also takes place outdoors, right? Many scenes are outdoors, some in the rain. You couldn't have obviously waited for rain.
Well, a lot of what you're doing is trying to accept what comes. It's Sintra is a microclimate that changes basically every hour, from cold to hot to rainy to clear to fog to, and we also had a lot of natural disasters. We had a hurricane, a forest fire, a bunch of things happened.
Did you shoot Frankie or Apocalypse Now?
Well, every film set, I always feel like whenever I'm on a film set, I'm often thinking about, pretty much every single day, I'm thinking about François Truffaut's La Nuit Américaine, Day for Night, the film about his film set, because something about the humor that he sees in this idea of a bunch of people trying to create something artificially in the real world comes to play every day. There's always something that seems, whether it just be like suddenly you've built something and you're in the middle of the woods and there's someone chopping a tree right next to you, and there's always something like that on a daily basis. And I think for me, I try to accept as best I can.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
Was Isabelle one of the first people you cast in this film?
Isabelle and I had met after she saw Love is Strange, and we started talking together, and I had this idea to make a film about a family on vacation, and I realized that would be a really wonderful project to work with Isabelle on. We would both be, in a good way, fish out of water. We'd both be somewhere different than our home, and I felt that we could discover new things. So Mauricio Zacharias, my co-writer, and I wrote the film with and for Isabelle, and then she agreed to do it.
So the script arrived with a letter kind of thing? Or
No, the script arrived. The letter had been before. I mean,
okay.
I didn't know. I had no idea what it was going to be about. I just knew that, or am I right? Yes.
You didn't know.
Ira didn't tell me anything about, and so I found when I read the script that she was, oh my God, phone is ringing. That
I don't pretend that I'm...
that she was an actress and that she was ill, and but all of that, if you say that like this, an actress ill, immediately a number of images come, connected to that, to informations, and in fact the way Ira treats these two themes, which are the main columns, of the role, actress and ill, in such a way that it doesn't look like anything that you can anticipate, or it's so different. It avoids all the cliches about illness, about being an actress. So it makes the whole thing very, very original, very fresh, very new, very singular.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
I do. I think I agree with you.
And immediately when you read the script, you could immediately feel, yes, okay, I'm an actress. And so forth and so what, I'm an actress, but it's
maybe the most attention to that was that scene with Greg Kinnear, actually, where he kind of gets you alone in the what was it,
in the park, yes, in this little pavilion, yes, in the park,
pavilion,
yes.
or something. It was a nice scene.
Yeah, that's a really nice scene. It's a very, very, it's because it's the perfect example. I think each scene are the perfect example of Ira's touch, but that scene maybe in particular, because you can take the scene is incredibly funny, but incredibly cruel, incredibly sharp, incredibly honest, incredibly. It's a whole philosophy of life. Also, she in 2 lines, she says about what she thinks one would expect from each other, And I mean, in just a few lines, it's so much loaded, and it's really it leaves you like I leave him, how do you say
jaw dropped.
Yes.
But I think, to me, what I think about, because I remember the moment when we shot it, and that's 2 things. One, that's an example of where that was written to be a walking and talking in the sun scene, and then it started raining and we ended up inside, and that's a great accident. And the other thing is, you're talking about what the lines or what that I might give you in terms of the script, but really what I think about is what the actors gave me in terms of what they were able to do and the complexity and the layers that they were able to generate from the words. that the words are just the base. And there's so many sentences. If I was writing a novel, whole sentences would be written about expression, emotion, a pause, all these things that are not in the script. So it's a mutual experience.
I know you
made it much funnier than I would have. I mean, you made it funnier without making it funny, right?
He has that.
That's our goal.
Yeah. No, interesting you mentioned that, because it's one of the things that I think Ira guarded us from, or warned us not to. The scene is really funny, so we had it wasn't necessary to be more funny than it is funny. I mean, the mere fact when I say, "Oh, you're the man," it says everything. Oh, okay. It can be the beginning of the scene, but it can be the end of the scene. Okay, you are the man. I don't even want to, of course, luckily we have the scene, but I mean, everything is said in one. So it wasn't necessary to say, oh, you are the man, Nothing to please the audience, just something much more natural and much more dry in a way. And it was necessary. It was not necessary to do anything else.
I just took our kids to see His Girl Friday, and I'm curious when I think about screwball comedy whether or not the goal is to play the lines or play the comedy, because there's such brilliant comic performances of Rosalind Russell, and I mean all the small performances, but it's interesting. Like, what were their directions? And
is it George Cukor, that film?
No,
that was Howard Hawks.
It's Howard Hawks.
Howard Hawks.
Yeah,
the two the bookends of that whole genre, or the two pillars. Really. Yeah. You grew up, Isabelle, with your mom was an English teacher, was she not?
Yes,
so did you grow up
way before I was born.
Oh, it was. Oh, because I didn't know how often you got the opportunity to speak. I was thinking through how many of your films I've seen, and don't remember you speaking English too often. But it was that an extra, dimension to trying to be acting and speaking English and thinking in English.
Well, I've been so many times here, and
yes,
I've done some English-speaking movies, and I've done some stage work in English.
Oh,
also.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Finally, I speak a little bit of English.
It could open up a whole new.
But I think there is something different about someone. I've worked in Vietnamese. I've worked in Danish. I've worked in Russian. I've worked in Spanish. So I've worked in a lot of languages, and I do feel that when an actor, and in life, not just an actor, when a person is speaking in their native tongue, a different part of them comes out. And I really feel that in the scene with Jérémie, Renier and Isabelle.
Renier.
It's just there's something which is, and in a way, what it does is it says that this is your primal relationship, prime relationship between you and your son. It seems so much more essential to some extent than you and Brendon Gleeson in the movie. Like it's got more history.
Yes, I keep saying, you are a slightly different person. I said the same, when you speak a different language, which is not your mother tongue language. And it was really nice in this film, interesting, because I speak, because of the composition of the family, English, French, American. So I would shift quite naturally between from French to the English, and rarely in the same film you have this possibility to be an English-speaking person, which means a slightly different person from what you are, and as Ira quite rightly said, a different person when you speak your own language. Yeah, and in a way, I think that there is something. Maybe when I speak French, in all those scenes where I speak French, there is something more, a bit, I don't know, more. I wouldn't say harder, but something maybe a little sharper. I don't know. Yeah.
Frankie, who's Francois is your character's name, right? So there's a nickname, and maybe it was bestowed upon you by Brendon Gleeson's character, right? Who knows who gave you that name? But I can sort of hear him saying that. Does he call her Frankie in the film, Brendon?
Yes. He calls her Frankie.
He does.
Actually, Michelle calls you Frankie in the film. Her ex-husband.
Yes, my ex-husband.
I can't really remember him using her name in the film to some extent.
It's such an unusual choice for the title.
Oh, yeah?
In a
Well,
sense.
to me, it's a film about presence an absence, and that there is something about the character which has certainly drawn everyone together. And I really feel like her she towers over scenes in an affectionate way, even when she's not there.
That's kind of true.
She's the glue. That's
true, and the name, giving it that name starts it off with you knowing that, or giving you the suggestion of such a thing.
Yes, it's also, to me, it alludes to kind of a novel. It's like a novelistic title. It's like there is a central character, and then there's lots of tangents.
That's a really good point, because it does feel like there's something novelistic about this particular film, and it's not all about so plot oriented as it is character and moments, and it.
But I actually think people say it's not plot oriented because the plot feels quite fluid. Because there's actually a lot of plot in the movie.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of things that happen in the movie. A boy meets a girl.
Maybe. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
But maybe you know what I mean. The arc, the big.
Yes.
Which American films are so used to leaning against.
Yes.
There would be the big. Waiting to break the news that someone has cancer, or it would all be about that moment, as opposed to, it seems like people are talking around it, more in this film.
Well, you're making me think about, we talked about vacation films and a film, like Voyage to Italy, which I think is maybe my favorite vacation film. Rossellini with Ingrid Bergman and George Sanders.
Oh, wow.
You've never seen it?
I have not seen that one, I'm embarrassed to say, but
it's a good... I mean, the thing about it is it's a film in which it's an associative film, and it's an abstract film. And I think that is the specific tradition of European cinema that's hard to find in America, is the abstract. That seems to be really not the history here.
The I guess my favorite was always the Antonioni with now I'm going to forget the first of his the sort of the trilogy with
Il Notte?
Before that one, the first one where the Monica Vitti, I think she
doesn't
L'Avventura. L'Avventura.
Yeah.
I'll have to edit that so I don't make
no.
that.
We're all scrambling.
By the way, I wanted to mention, you may not remember this, but I was actually in Love Is Strange.
Yes. He was one of the extras in the film.
Oh, I was told I was a principal.
No, that was someone told you falsely.
Okay, well, that might explain why I haven't seen any checks. Well, I was in two scenes, but I'm one of the last people seen on this.
Yes.
Walking across the street at the very end. I don't know if I have to watch it again. Anyway, I thought you don't look as impressed as I was hoping. Just kidding. Anyway, it was really. Let's repeat that Frankie is opening here in New York. Anywhere else?
And Los Angeles on the 25th,
you.
And then around the country in the weeks after.
Opening wider as in the coming weeks. Where is it playing in New York, by the way?
At the Angelica
Very
and
good.
At the Landmark at 57th Street.
Okay, right. Very good. I hope people go check it out. And I want to say a very moving moment was this final way you close the film, which stands out in my memory very, very much, where you have this long shot down at the edge of the is it a cliff?
Yeah, it's a cliff.
It is a cliff, right, overlooking the ocean.
Yeah.
And one by, like in pairs, your actors. I think that was just. How did you come? I have to ask you how you came up with that. Because
I think the landscape often told me how to shoot it, and I think I spent so much time in that very location. I visited, went back maybe 20, 25 times. And sometime at a moment I was up on a hill looking down, and I saw the crew in a distance. And it was really this one vantage point. I took a picture on my phone, and it just that image of the actor is almost on the moon. The actor on a set, the actor as a character in the distance in a landscape that was bigger than them, was something that was very powerful to me.
But I also think of it in a smaller way, like just families, they pair, when you have reunions and stuff, it's interesting how people pair off.
Well, it's about a 4-minute shot that I feel that everyone who watches can interpret
the way they want.
The way they want to.
And the way they will.
But by the time you get to that shot, they have enough information to do that in a personal way with the characters. Mm-hmm. They know the characters. They know the colors of the clothes they're wearing. They know they know their history, at least some imagined version of their history. And so I think that there is a pleasure of letting your mind roam with those characters.
Well, I don't know if every filmmaker, director of fiction is quite as thoughtful about everything as you are, Ira, because speak to so many, but you show a way into the mind of a filmmaker really in a special way, and I think that's why I like talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
I don't come across quite so frequently.
Thank you.
And it's a delight to meet you, Isabelle, and to sit and talk with you. And thank you for sharing so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.